There it goes again. So I am reading from Rays of the One Light. These are weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriyananda and based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. This week's topic is the secret of right action. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. One of the most famous stories in the Gospels is that of Martha and Mary. Jesus, visiting the home of Martha, was teaching while her sister Mary sat at his feet, absorbing his divine love and wisdom. Martha, meanwhile, busied herself with serving her guests and was upset with Mary for not helping her. "Lord," she cried, "doesn't it matter to you that my sister has left me to do all this serving alone? Please ask her to help me." "Martha, Martha," Jesus answered, "thou art careful and troubled about many things, but one thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her." This story is classic, for Martha's complaint is very understandable and not, on the surface of it, spiritually wrong. Jesus may well have told Mary to get up and help her. We don't really know that he didn't, considerate as he always was for others' needs. But the teaching here doesn't concern the obvious dilemma of devotees, which is to work for God or to spend all one's time in prayer. It concerns rather the attitude of the mind. Jesus didn't tell Martha, "Martha, you are doing too much." He told her rather, "You are letting your work affect your inner peace." That was the contrast. Not work versus contemplation, but restless preoccupation versus peaceful absorption under all circumstances. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, actions performed under the influence of desire are greatly inferior to those which are guided by wisdom. Happiness eludes people when they act from self-interest. Seek shelter, therefore, in the equanimity of wisdom. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Peaceful absorption under all circumstances. That's what we have to strive for. In fact, I was reading some interesting things about Sri Rama Yogi, and that's one of the things that he said, was that's the purpose of life, is to be so interiorized in every moment, just being completely absorbed in the divine self, in the soul self. And that's what service helps us to learn how to do. That's the purpose of service. And our path, as our Guru Yogananda has repeatedly told us, our path is one of meditation and service. And service, you can see this story of Martha and Mary as sort of a direction for what service does for us, what the purpose of service is. It gets us going. First, we have to have energy. We have to have will to do things, the strength, the energy, the willingness to do things, and to be able to learn to put our energy out. If we're just sort of lying on the couch, that's not preoccupation with the divine, that's just laziness. So first we have to move our energy. We have to get it going. We have to feel God's energy and manifest it, put it out in a very real way. And then it's easy to be like Martha. And we're just tearing our hair out because there's so much to do and so little time. And we get very anxious and overwrought and all the pots are boiling over. Why isn't my sister helping me? That's Martha, but it's only a stage. It's a stage that we probably all go through. Putting out so much energy that we're just running. But Mary shows us where we're going. Finally, we take all that energy that we've manifested and we draw it in. And we start to realize, where does that energy come from? It's not just me. It's coming from God. And then we start to realize God is the one doing everything, not us. The more that we let Him, or since it's Mother's Day, we let her, the Divine Mother, come through us. There was I'll preface this story just by saying that we have to realize that there are miracles happening around us all the time. There are so many miracles that we start taking them for granted. We don't see them. Oh, it's just circumstances. Oh, it's just coincidence. Oh, it's just luck. It was this, it was that. But if we start to tune into what a divine miracle this body is, and how it breathes, and how it moves, and how it thinks, and start to realize we are really not this body, but a soul having this body like a vehicle, like a car, like you're getting ready to turn it in for a new model. But it is just a vehicle for consciousness. And so if we start to feel that God is really the doer, God's energy is moving through us, making things happen, then we start to see little miracles everywhere. And I'll just share one that happened to me decades ago when I was living in Italy. We were just starting the Ananda work in Europe. And the first house we had, as many of you have maybe heard some of these stories, was a place, a summer house up in the mountains above Lake Como in northern Italy. And let's just say it was a cold winter in a summer house that was not designed to have anybody there in the winter. But as the winter began to thaw and the snow outside began to slowly melt away, we realized, or I realized, I think some of the other people knew because they'd been there longer, but there was a beautiful garden there. And it overlooked the valley. It was just incredibly beautiful. And being Italy, there were many churches. Every tiny little hamlet had its own church. Beautiful cathedrals with church bells. And also being Italy, they were not exact on agreement of what time it was. So I'll just preface the story with that. So I was out in the garden teaching a class to some people, and we had yoga mats spread out. We did some yoga first, and then I had them lie down in savasana, and we did a chakra exercise because the class had been about the chakras too. So we went through the chakras one by one, a little meditation on each one. And then we got to the heart chakra. Now, remember, the heart chakra's astral sound is that of a bell. So we got to the heart chakra, and I was describing, this and that about the heart chakra. And then it was noon in Italy. And one by one, all the church bells began to ring. Not all at once, over a period of 5 or 6 minutes. The sound of the bell. That was a miracle, small one, but that was Divine Mother. How could I have orchestrated that? No possible way in the world. But there she was, saying, tune in to the heart. So if we begin to live our lives in that way, being her instrument, just wanting to do her will. Jesus on the cross, being crucified, thy will be done. Into thy hands I commend my spirit. That's what we need to do when things get a little rocky. When we start to be crucified in our own particular tiny little way. Swami Kriyananda loved Anandamoy Ma, and she was truly a personification of the Divine Mother. And when he visited her, he spent quite a bit of time with her when she was in India, and she called him her little child. She loved Swami. She said, many, many, many have come to this body, but none have taken what you have. You were like the bee that came in and stole the honey. And so they had a very, very sweet relationship. And one of the things that she said to him, and I speak of her because it's Mother's Day, and she was such a beautiful example of the Divine Mother. She said to him, always think that the divine grace is with you. Depend on that grace, and you will find it never wanting. Again, always think that the divine grace is with you. Depend on it, and you will never find it wanting. So the more that we do that, the more we are in a flow of energy. It's as though we're on a rocky riverbank and we tiptoe into the water. It's slippery, and the currents are running backwards around the edge of the water, and it's a little tough going. But then when we get into the flow, we're just carried along. And that's what we want. We're just trying to get there, but once we're there, then it moves you. So I'll just close with one last thought from Anandamoy Ma. Swami had, it's very sweet when you read about it. Brother Turiyananda had asked him to bring him back something from Anandamoy Ma. So Swami didn't want to ask for himself, but he asked for Brother Turiyananda, Mother, can I have some small thing? And she said, ask whatever you want of my belongings. You are my child. Ask anything. And Swami was so reticent. He said, well, a handkerchief. And so an attendant brought that. And then Swami thought, oh, it would be wonderful to have something for myself too. And so then he said, could I have 2 handkerchiefs? And everybody laughed. And she took off her shawl that she was wearing, and she wrapped it around Swami. And she said, wrap your body in this shawl, but remember Nama, the name of God. That is the best thing to wrap yourself in. So if we're wondering how to get from this rocky shore into that flow, that's the way. Wrap yourself in the name of God. What better thing to think of? Make a list sometime of your thoughts and look at it. Is this better than the name of God? I don't think so. Wrap yourself in the name of God. And then she said something else, if I can remember. She said, you will be so wrapped in joy that you will laugh at all danger. Isn't that beautiful? Wrap yourself in the name of God and you will be so filled with joy that you will laugh at all dangers. And so as we go forth into this, I would say, fairly uncertain world, a little bit rocky, just wrap yourself in the name of God. Depend on that grace that is always with you. Keep reminding yourself that that grace, divine grace, is always there. Depend on it. Lean on it. Trust it. And it will never fail you. And wrap yourself in the name of God. And then you can laugh at all dangers.
Growing up in the Christian tradition that I grew up in, we didn't really have a conceptualization of God in the form of the Divine Mother. That sort of just didn't exist for us. And so coming to Ananda, I remember tuning into that and sort of growing into this awareness and really appreciating Swami Kriyananda's commitment to and devotion to the Divine Mother. I was mentioning earlier in the meditation and fire ceremony that we had that even into the last days of his life, Swamiji was planning yet another pilgrimage to another shrine of the Divine Mother in France. And he had made it a point in his life to visit every shrine of the Divine Mother that he could find in this world. And which is a way of saying, in one way, from our standpoint, that we're trying to remind ourselves of the Divine Mother. Because when you go to a shrine of the Divine Mother, you're going to be around people who are devoted to her. You're going to be around a vibration that draws you into her consciousness. But then, we go on with our daily life, as Nirmala was saying. We look at the list of thoughts that we've written down and we go, let's see, Divine Mother, name of the God, well, I think I'm going with the name of God. Or we should. But when we take a pilgrimage, those who went to India with us some years ago or some years before that went to Italy, or others who have taken pilgrimages in the past, you remember, you go to a shrine and you feel a sacred vibration. You know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are on holy ground. And it's interesting, we lived in India for almost 9 years. And of that 9 years, you might think, oh, well, we must have made countless pilgrimages. No. We made a daily pilgrimage around Swamiji. And I had of the 9 years, I had 3 days in Rishikesh that I could call a pilgrimage. However, it was colored slightly by the fact that I was leading the pilgrimage. So it wasn't like I could just sort of relax and go into this consciousness of, I mean, I had to sort of, help troop all these people, including Indians, along on the pilgrimage, and it took a fair amount of work to keep all that organized and happening. But when I did finally go on a pilgrimage from here, and we went around India for several weeks, I remember being surprised by several places, but one in particular, which was the temple of Dakshineshwar, just outside Calcutta, is the place where Ramakrishna lived, and the temple itself is marvelous. And going up to the Murti of the Divine Mother there, Mother Kali, was wonderful, although we only got seconds. I mean, you're marching in a line of people, and even if you want to hang out there, there is this tidal force of humanity pushing you forward to keep you moving on, so that so the line doesn't get blocked. I mean, otherwise everybody would stop in front of the Murti and just stay there, and basically nobody would get to see that. But I remember going into his rooms, Ramakrishna's rooms, very humble, very simple, and people were coming and going, yes, but it wasn't this crush of humanity. So several of us could just pull aside and meditate in the corners of the room. And we did for quite a while. And I just remember this touch of the divine. And it was so fresh, and it was so alive and so present. It wasn't canned, it wasn't preserved, it wasn't dried or something, it was like right now, just fresh picked. And it was just overwhelmingly surprising. Now, why should it be surprising? It's silly. But what Nirmala was talking about, this miracle of the bells going off, just at that exact moment, that's the kind of thing, our lives can become a miracle. We ourselves can become a manifestation of miracle in the present tense. It's not just historical, it's not just scripture. I was noticing that the cover of Whispers from Eternity talks about this being one of the greatest scriptures of divine poetry, mystical poetry ever written. And I remember thinking, we sort of think of this word scripture as meaning something from thousands of years ago, right? It means the Bible, it means the Vedas, it means, whatever. From a long time ago, it is a scripture, it is holy. It just means it was written down. Well, we were written down too. Our lives are a scripture. We are a scripture. But we have to learn to manifest that daily. And part of manifesting that daily is to turn to the Divine Mother and call on her. Just as this reading, I love the little Whispers reading, I will be thy naughty baby. I will cry. I will wake all creation. If you don't come to me, I'm going to just cut loose and everybody's going to be crying for you. It's just so endearing. Well, that's what we have to do, because otherwise, what? Otherwise, we get another doll. We get another plaything. We get another something to distract us. If that's going to distract you, okay, go ahead. Have that. Play for a while. And then finally, those of you who have kids, moms especially, but anyone who has had kids, there's a kind of cry that the baby makes, the little kid makes, that says, wee, 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 wee. I'm bored. I'm annoyed. I don't feel good. Somebody should entertain me, whatever. And then there is the cry of, something's wrong. I need help now. Like just, Wah! That's a whole different kind of cry. You can tell the difference. Even I can tell the difference. And I didn't have any kids in this lifetime, except a lot, but not of my own. And But you can hear that. Well, sooner or later we have to make that cry. And that's the kind of cry that Yogananda's talking about in this reading, where we've just become tired of it all. And it's not, I mean, we love Divine Mother's manifestation in nature. We love the freshness of realizing her presence, but no substitutes, no playthings anymore. Don't fob me off with just nonsense. I want your presence. That call has to come from within us sooner or later and in our own way. When it does, then she comes. Yes, she does come. And she doesn't keep putting playthings in front of us. So let's call to her in that way. Call to the divine in whatever way draws from your heart. At the offertory, I'm going to share a song written by Swami Kriyananda that is, to me, one of the most moving that he ever wrote. It's just called Mother of Us All. All your children, Mother, call you, knowing not it's you they call. Some through mists of their unknowing, bruised and hurting when they fall, turn away, but who can leave you, you the Mother of us all? Feel that call in your own heart. We've all wandered in this world, we've all fallen down, we've all skinned our knees or bruised our elbows or whatever it may be. We've all played in this world for a long, long time. When will we call to the Divine Mother with that kind of call that says, Mother, nothing else anymore. Don't play. Don't hide from me. Don't push me off and see if I'll get tempted with something else. You come to me. When we call in that way, she does come.